guys, so today I'm going to show you how to cream and powder, highlight and contour using a few different products that I recommend. I'm just going to talk you through a few reasons why we do it and what might work best for you. If you're not already, please do subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you found it really helpful, and let's see if we can learn any tips and tricks today. So we're going to start with some cream contours, and with contour it's really about either changing the shape of your face or accentuating the shape of the face that you already have. Basically anywhere that you add darkness is going to create a shadow and therefore a dip in your face. So for example, if I put a contour line going straight across here, my face is going to have a dip that goes in a straight line coming across, which would make my face appear wider. If I put the lines going up more like this, it draws the eye coming down to the centre of your face and makes your face look more pointy. For me today, I like the placement of my cheekbones, so I'm just going to accentuate them even more, whereas I do not like the shape of my chin. I'd like it to be a little bit more straight here. So whereas I come down a little bit and then across, I'm going to create a straight line to cut out that little dip. So you really want to choose something matte for this. Most people prefer something that's not a warm colour, so you want a cool tone. I quite like to contour with more of a warm colour, so this is totally up to you, but the normal preference is to go for something a little bit on the cooler side. If you're going to grab a cream product, I would grab something a little bit like this, or perhaps something a little bit thinner, so you've got like a stick that you can apply it with. If you're using a cream contour that's in a palette, just grab a small brush and you can apply it exactly where you want to. So I'm going to go in, I'm using the NARS Matte Multiple, and this is in the colour Cappadoce. So I'm going to go in and follow the line from the top of my ear here, coming down towards the corner of my mouth, because that is where my natural cheekbone is. And I'm going to go right underneath the cheekbone here. My general rule of thumb, which you do not have to follow if you like something a little bit different, is that I like to go right underneath the cheekbone here for my contour. I like to do my blush just on my cheekbone, and right at the top of my cheekbone is where I apply my highlight. Okay, so just using the edge of the product, I'm just going to drag that down, just creating a thin line. And then at the bottom here, instead of following the shape of my jawline, I'm going to come straight across. I like to make my forehead look a little bit pointier to get more of like an oval shaped face, whereas my head up here is a little bit wider. So I'm going to take that across the top of my head in a diagonal movement and just on the sides, just to slim down the sides even more. For my nose then, I like to make my nose look a little bit thinner, so what I do again is just use the very edge of this and create a straight line down the side of the nose. Most people like to go all the way up, and that's personal preference again, but personally I just like to keep light in the centre of my face here and just concentrate on making this part of my nose smaller. I like to make the end of my nose look a tiny bit more turned up, so I create a small shadow just here. So just along the sides, I'm creating two little lines which I'm going to blend in. But basically, if you want your nose to look slimmer, bring those lines closer together, and if you want your nose to look a little bit wider, you bring them further apart. For blending this in then, you can use different tools. You can either use a brush, you can use brushes like these, or you can use a beauty blender. What I like to do for this part is I like to use these brushes. These are from Primark. They are very similar to the Artiste brushes. I like to use the smallest one, which I'm pretty sure was about £1, for my nose, and then the medium-sized one for the rest of my face. So just starting on my nose, I'm just going to create a small blending movement, just really softly, in the direction that I've already applied the product. This one's just going to go up. Again, not going all the way up to my brow. And what I like to do then is just grab my beauty blender that's already got my foundation on it and just tap over it lightly just to blend it in with my foundation. I'm just going to do the same thing for the rest of my face, just following in the direction that we've already applied the product. When I get to this top section then, I do like to bring it down a little bit as opposed to going in the same direction, just to sort of create just light in the centre of the forehead here. So we'll come on to the powder side of contouring in a moment, but we're just going to go on to highlighting. So highlighting now is kind of merged with concealing as well. So I'm just going to show you a few different products. So one that I used to use for a super long time is the MAC Prep and Prime. This has got a lovely pigment to it, but it's not quite as heavy as this one, which is the Tarte Shape Tape. I believe that the NARS one is pretty similar to this, but not as heavy if you wanted to try something familiar to this. So the concealing part is more about adding light to your face that doesn't include any kind of shimmer. So that is what I'm going to do first. I'm going to highlight the places in my face that I really feel need to be lifted out a little bit more to contrast from those dark areas. What you're effectively doing with highlighting is bringing those areas forward and generally lightening the face. What I would suggest for this is to first of all look in the mirror and just turn your head and see where you've got dark areas that you don't like, that you want to make lighter, and also use reference photos as well. So just see on that person what areas do you like that look nice and bright, and try and trial those out on your own face. As a rule of thumb, light generally looks the most flattering above the cheekbones and down the centre of the face, with some brighter under eyes than we do have naturally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in under the eyes. I'm just going to dab on the kind of places where I'd like to conceal. And again, the tip of the nose, this just lifts the nose up slightly. Just going to apply a tiny bit in the centre that I'm going to spread down. Bringing that light to the centre of the forehead, top of the lip. And I get a lot of darkness around my nose that I like to conceal. And then I'm a tiny bit darker just around the corner of my mouth. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit here. And again, a very small amount just underneath where we added our contour, and the smallest dot on my chin. To blend this in, I do like to use the pointy end of a beauty blender, and I use this with a setting spray. The setting spray I'm using is the Urban Decay All Nighter. I just like to get the end of that really down. I'm going to start blending these areas out, and this is a really thick concealer, so that's why we apply just a tiny bit. And if you go a little bit overboard, you can go back to the other side of your beauty blender, which has got the tiny bits of your foundation left. With the under eye then, I'm just going to smooth this into a triangular shape. I haven't applied it all under the eyes as a triangular shape because it is heavy and it will spread. And just to lift the eye a little bit, I like to go in a sort of diagonal motion from the corner of the eye up towards the tail end of my brow. And I find that this just lifts the eye a little bit. The nose, I'm going to try and keep this as in as straight a line as possible, and just dab on the end of the nose just to blend out that area and lighten it up. And then take this section right down the middle of the nose. And then up here, we're just going to create a sort of diamond shape where the brows are, just to lighten up and bring that light to the centre of the face. As I like to go in and set that then, a long time favourite has been the Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Powder. If you want a more cost effective product than that, the RCMA powder is a really good under eye setting powder. So what I like to use this with is a really tiny little beauty blender. I think these were from Primark as well. And instead of taking the top off and sprinkling, I like to totally take the top off and dip the beauty blender inside. Okay, so you have to make sure you've got no creases under the eye in any concealer before you do this. And then I just like to tap it underneath, and the concealer will soak up whatever it needs. So don't drag it, just tap it. Now bring that to the side of the nose as well. This powder is really good if you get super shiny anyway, so I like to take this right down the centre of my face because I tend to get an oily T. For me, this powder is really long lasting. And anything that hasn't been soaked up, then you can just gently buff in. So a couple of cream highlights that I like that add sort of the shine and the shimmer to the face. One of which is the Sleek highlighting palette. This is the Precious Metals palette. This is old, I believe, but I will see if there's a link to it below. And I personally like to use the more of the golden creamy colours here. So I will use these on the cheeks just to show you what they look like. So just applying that highlight right on top of the cheekbone, and then blending that out with my finger. And I find that the finger with the tapping motion tends to not move the foundation underneath. Another fave is the RMS Beauty. This is the Living Luminizer, and I'm just going to show you this on sort of the tip of the nose and the top of the lip. This is a really gorgeous, lovely, natural sort of cream highlight, as natural as they can be. This one's not as sort of glittery, it's more of like a wet look. When you are adding a shiny or shimmery highlight to the face, do the same thing again. Look in the mirror or stand in the light with a mirror, and as you turn your face, just look, where does the light naturally hit? And which of those areas do you like being lit, and which of those areas don't you? So for example, the light hits me here, and I don't quite like that. I feel like it makes my face look larger here, so I wouldn't apply a sort of shimmery or shiny highlight here. I do, however, like how I've got a natural light hitting me and a curve here, so I will make sure that I add a shimmery or shiny highlight in this area. So we've just added one here, but I will add some powder up here. The light does hit me on the chin, and I don't like that to be shimmery, but what I do like is when the light hits me on the top of the lip and a little bit on the nose. So they're the areas that I'm going to apply the highlight. You have a look at yourself though, have a look at sort of pictures again and see what you like on certain people, and have a play about and see what works again for your face. As we're moving on to powder products, the same rules do apply for powder for contour and highlight, so just follow those, but I'm just going to show you some of my faves. So one that I've been using a long time again is the NARS Laguna Bronzer, and this is a matte bronzer which I use to contour with. It's a warm shade, but it's not like a bright orange warm shade, so that's why I like to use that for contouring. Another one is the Charlotte Tilbury Bronze and Glow, and this one's I find is a little bit more light reflective, so is nicer for when you want that sort of summer glow. But yeah, I do really like her highlight in this palette. You can use different types of brushes for this. You can use a thick fan brush to really get in those contoured areas, but I like to use something a little bit smaller, and this was from Amazon, I'm pretty sure, which is like a small Real Techniques brush. And I like to just go over the areas and set that cream that we've placed. When it comes to adding that powder on the nose, I do like to use a really thin, flat brush, and this is a Royal Langnickel Silk Pro. It's just a very flat, angled brush, so I like to go over those areas again, just using the tip of the brush. For powder highlight then, some of my favourites have been the Rodial 01 Illuminating Powder, the Kevyn Aucoin Candlelight Powder, which I cannot open because it's broken into 1,000 tiny pieces, the Charlotte Tilbury Bronze and Glow, and two new faves, which are the Desi x Katie Dose of Colours collections, and this one is Mirame, and this one is Fuego. I'm going to use Mirame, I think, today. Brushes I like to use for this are a tapered, I'm pretty sure this is a foundation brush from Real Techniques, and I like the way that this is really tapered towards the end. You can use a thin fan brush, and then I like to go right underneath the eye, which I'll show you now, with another flat brush, so underneath the eyebrow, sorry, because that is where I like the light to hit. And I notice sometimes that the centre of the eye as well is where the light hits really nicely. So I'm going to use the fan brush to apply to all of those areas that we discussed, but I'm also going to take it around in this kind of C shape and add in that shine to the top there. So those areas that I said I also liked were the top of the lip, the tip of the nose, and I take just a tiny bit down the centre of the nose just to bring the light and draw your eye into the centre of the face. Okay guys, and that is it. I really hope you found that helpful and learnt something from that today. Remember, the more angles you apply to your face coming in a diagonal down motion, the thinner that your face is going to look. If you put them more sidewards, the wider that your face is going to look. And just remember that every face is different. How you look is totally different from anybody else. What you like to wear on your face and how you like to look is going to be totally different from anybody else. So take what you like from today's video, have a play about, see what works best for you, and share your tips below, guys. If you're not already, please do subscribe. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.